wanted to connect with his students, so he invited them to his house to drink and smoke, and then he took them to the club. Then on the way home, they were pulled over for speeding. The teacher was then fired from his job. Finally, in Washington, a father was taking his daughter on a school trip when another father recognized him from being on the Washington's most wanted list. After a struggle with the police, the man escaped. However, after negotiations, the man turned himself in the same night. This guy got stranded with no service and used a drone to save his life. One day, Casey Ryan decided to take a hike with his friend in the snowy mountains of the Willamette National Forest in Oregon. During their hike, they came across a van driver who was stuck in the snow. Ryan and his friend tried to dig out the van, but the conditions were too icy. They had no cell service and the temperature was starting to drop, so they were running out of options. Eventually, they came up with a genius plan to put a phone on the drone and fly it up high enough so that it would get cell service. So they wrote an SOS message to Ryan's wife, then put it on the drone and put it up in the air for around a minute so it would send. When they landed the drone, they were astonished to see that the message had actually went through. Search and rescue then arrived early the next morning to save the men. Everyone laughed at the price of this building until they saw what was underneath. A $17.5 million secret lies underneath this building, which is 2 hours from Savannah, Georgia. The land that the building is on is 32 acres and it has caretakers, which may make you think that there's something important hidden under there, because why else would there be guards? The property also has a 100-yard shooting range for up to 4 people. And what's hidden underneath is a nuclear blast-proof bunker that could protect against the worst of the worst. It was built in 1969 by the US Army 45 feet underground in case of a nuclear emergency. At the time, it cost $7 million to make, which would be equivalent to $45 million today. Even though it's really old, in 2012 it was renovated. They also added a bunch of things like food in case there actually was an emergency, and it has the capacity to hold 20 people for a full year or 40 people for a short period of time. 3 animals that saved human lives. One day at 4 in the morning, this parrot started squawking. Not because it was hungry, but because the laundry room was on fire. The loud noises from the parrot woke up its owners, then they ran outside and called the fire department. If it weren't for the parrot, their whole house could have been destroyed, and even worse yet, they could have been hurt badly. One winter night in Russia, someone heard a cat meowing outside their apartment, so they went to go and see it. When they got there, they realized it wasn't the cat making noises, it was actually a baby crying. If it weren't for the cat keeping the baby warm, it might not have survived in the cold. A 5-year-old named Amber Mason and her family traveled to Thailand for a vacation. While they were there, Amber became friends with a 4-year-old elephant. One morning when they were strolling the beach, an unexpected tsunami hit. The elephant rushed to the water to get Amber and pulled her to shore where her mother was waiting. If it weren't for the elephant, she could have drowned. This 17-year-old goes to her friend's house for a sleepover, but then something terrible happens. In June 2008, when Cody was at his friend's house for a sleepover, his mom called him to check on him, but he didn't answer, so then she got worried. Cody ended up calling her back later, but by the sound of his voice, his mom could tell that something was wrong, so she called 911 immediately. At the hospital, they told him that he had suffered from a stroke. They then had to send him by a helicopter to a special medical institute in another state for treatment. Every single second that passed was crucial. When he got there, he had emergency surgery because he had a lot of swelling in his brain. They had to wait 3 weeks to see the results from the surgery to see if Cody would make it. They said it would take Cody a long time to speak again, but he was able to speak again just 1 month after surgery, and his first words were, "I love you, Mom, and thanks to the surgeons for saving my life." He had to do rehab to learn how to do many things again, but after 2 years, he was fully recovered. Dangerous things scientists did to themselves. Henry Smolinski was tired of working his job as an engineer, so he decided to quit and pursue his dream, which was to make the world's first flying car available for anyone in the world to purchase. His plan was to take a Ford Petna and put it together with the tail and wings of a Cessna Skymaster plane. After a bunch of successful test flights, the public launch was only a few months away. But one day, when Henry and his co-founder was doing further testing, they came crashing down. Due to bad welds and bad locking mechanisms, the wings failed and they crashed. Unfortunately, everyone in the flying car passed away. The ending of this sad story will shock you. A man married a beautiful girl that he loved very much. One day she developed a skin disease, which made her slowly lose her beauty. The next day, her husband left for a tour. When he was returning, he got into an accident and lost his eyesight. But their married life continued like usual. As the days passed, she lost her beauty even more. But since the man was blind, he didn't know this, and continued to love her. But one day, she suddenly passed away. The man was very sad and wanted to leave the town. But someone asked him, "How will you be able to walk alone since your wife always helped you?" He then said, "I'm not blind. I was acting because if she knew I could see her skin condition, it would have pained her even more than the disease. So I pretended to be blind to keep her happy." This is the longest whip ever cracked. In 2018, these two friends were walking on the sidewalk when one friend decided to push the other, not realizing that she would fall over and almost get hit by a bus. These are the most terrifying close calls caught on camera, and let's continue. This boy was outside during a storm playing in the rain when all of a sudden lightning struck the fence behind him, but the boy was luckily unharmed. In 2015, a couple were riding on a motorcycle when it was pouring rain. It was raining so much that there were big puddles in the middle of the road. As the man started to speed up, he lost control and they fell off. The man grabbed the lady to protect her until they came to a full stop. They then realized that her helmet was way too big, and luckily there was no oncoming traffic at this time. Chilling last photos before they went missing. Andrew McCauley's last photo was a self-portrait taken while he was alone in his kayak in the middle of the ocean. At the age of 39, he set out on a journey to be the first person to kayak from Australia to New Zealand. Unfortunately, even though he prepared for 10 years, he was unable to make it. His kayak and camera were found, but there was no trace of him. He was most likely capsized from a wave separating him from his kayak and ended up dying from hypothermia in the middle of the ocean. Chris Creamers and Lisanne Froon. In this photo, they're both smiling at the camera with the mountains of El Pionista Trail in the background. On April 1st, 2014, they were preparing to go on the trail. After the trail, the family that was hosting was concerned because they hadn't returned, so they looked around but they couldn't find them. Days later, on the same trail, they found parts of their decomposed bodies. They think they had a fatal accident, but to this day their deaths remain a mystery. 1 in a million coincidences. This bird landed on the page about itself. This guy's t-shirt, race number, and finishing time were all the same number. A dog gave birth to these 3 puppies, each with their own corresponding number on their back. These 2 strangers sat next to each other at a bar and spelled Cookie Monster. And this person managed to take a picture at the exact same time as the balloon was popping. This man faked a 2-year coma to avoid going to court, and you won't believe how he got caught. His name is Alan, and he stole $60,000 from his 86-year-old neighbor. As soon as the cops started to investigate, that's when he decided to fake an injury. He said a garage door fell on his back, which paralyzed him from his neck down. He went to the doctors, and even though they said there was nothing wrong with him and they couldn't see anything, he kept going back. He kept doing this for 2 years, and whenever the police came to talk to him, he hopped in a medical bed and would pretend he's in a coma at his house. But 2 years later, he got caught shopping on a security camera when he was supposed to be in a coma. He was then sentenced to 14 months in prison. 5 close calls caught on camera. A fan falls from the ceiling, luckily landing right in the middle of people sitting on the floor. This car tries to pass a trailer and nearly runs into the oncoming traffic. A guy on a motorcycle nearly collides with a horse and a buggy crossing the road. This woman runs across the street and is nearly hit by a truck before slipping, falling, and just barely missing the back of the truck's tire. The weirdest laws that actually existed. In ancient Egypt, it was considered a crime to shave your beard. Only the pharaoh was allowed to have a clean-shaved face, since it was a symbol of his power and majesty. In Dunstable, England, it used to be illegal to beat a rug in the streets after 11 p.m. This law was put in place to prevent loud noises and let people sleep peacefully at night. And finally, in Alabama, it's illegal to wear a fake mustache that causes laughter in church. This law was put in place to prevent people from disrupting religious services with funny disguises. This man was selling pens to feed his child, and this photo changed their lives forever. Abdul was a single father and a Syrian refugee living in Lebanon. One day, he was selling pens while holding his daughter when a web developer saw them and decided to take a picture, then post it on Twitter. He shared the picture because he wanted to show a hardworking father trying to make money to take care of his family. The photo ended up going viral, so he started a fundraiser campaign to try and raise money for Abdul and his daughter. He was hoping to raise around $5,000, but after 24 hours of it being created, the campaign had made over $100,000 of donations. So far, Abdul has received 40% of the donations, and with that money, he was able to move into a larger apartment and send his child to school. They also helped 16 other Syrian refugees by giving them jobs at a kebab store and 2 bakeries that he was able to open with the money that was donated. Smart tactics that police use when they pull you over. If the cop is suspicious of you, then they'll tap your rear tail light. By doing this, it may startle the driver and make them stop whatever they're doing. This also lets the officer see if the trunk is locked so no one can jump out and ambush them. But the main reason they do this is so that they can leave their fingerprint. So if anything bad happens to the cop, they can prove that the suspect made contact with them. Here's why Iceland is the safest country in the world. First of all, the crime rate is so low that the police don't even carry guns. The SWAT team does carry them, but they barely have to use them because the average murder rate per year is 0 to 1.5. They also have barely any harmful animals. So that means no mosquitoes, no ticks, no bears, no snakes, no poisonous spiders, and things like that. No one that lives there has a bodyguard, not even the president. Parents leave their toddlers outside in strollers to nap. They say that babies usually fall asleep in less than 1 minute due to the cool and fresh air. And finally, the fastest speed limit they have is 90 kilometers per hour or 55 miles per hour. The most genius design ideas. This lamppost holds up an umbrella for people sitting on the bench when it's raining. This cat bed is shaped as honey spilling out of a jar. This sidewalk had a crack in the cement, so someone filled it with a glass portrait. This doctor has an IV bag full of water to water the plant. Here's what the doorknob looks like at this person's butcher. This wet floor sign is shaped as a banana peel. Now before I show you the best one, I found this app that lets you live stream without any requirements like a certain amount of followers. If you want to try it out and meet some new friends, just press the link in the comments. Finally, this sponge holder is shaped like SpongeBob. 5 photos you'll have to look at twice. First off, in this picture, it looks like the person only has half a body. But the reason it looks like that is because they're just holding up a mirror. At first, it looks like the camel wearing the red is standing on the camel wearing the blue, but the camel in the red is just farther back in the photo. It looks like this rock is falling from the sky and about to hit the raccoon, but it's actually just a rock in a lake, and the lake has a reflection of the sky. At first, this might look like a painting, but it's actually just a swan swimming in water. And finally, we have this building that's almost floating, and to be honest, I don't even know what's going on here. Here's how to survive if you get stuck in quicksand. First off, there's no need to panic because it's actually almost impossible to drown in quicksand. Your body would stop at your waist since quicksand is 2 times more dense than a human body. So firstly, get rid of any backpack or gear that you're wearing to make it easier to get out. Then start wiggling your legs to loosen up the sand so that water can trickle down to make your feet and legs slide out easier. Next, you'll want to lay down on your back and start doing a backstroke until your feet come out of the sand. Then stay on your back and start rolling as fast as you can to get out of the quicksand. Here's why you should never touch a dead whale. The blue whale is the largest animal on the planet and can reach 29 meters in length. The weight of this animal is 180 tons, which is equivalent to 33 elephants. And although everyone would be attracted if they see one, it's best to stay far away if you see a dead whale due to health reasons. If you touch a dead whale with wounds, you can be infected with viruses or bacteria. And if you're exposed to the gases that it releases for too long, it can cause you to faint. Also, when a whale dies, it decomposes and generates many internal gases that can cause it to explode at any second. When that happens, the whale pieces can fly at a speed of 80 kilometers per hour for up to 70 meters around it. That's why they have to create holes in a dead whale so that it releases as many gases as possible so it doesn't explode. 5 animals that can kill themselves. Sometimes the horns of rams and goats grow so curved and big that they penetrate their skull, causing their death. Horses and donkeys can suffer from abnormal growth in their hooves. If their hooves aren't trimmed, they can no longer walk because of the pain, causing them to die from starvation. When turtles fall on their back, it's really hard for them to roll back over. When this happens, they usually die from too much sun, starvation, or attacks from another animal. During mating season, deers get into such aggressive fights with each other that their antlers get stuck together to the point where they can't be untied. When this happens and no one can separate them, the deer die because they're unable